All right, everyone ready for this? Today we're doing a deep dive into active recall.
Ooh, active recall.
Yeah, people have probably heard about it,
Yeah,
maybe tried it out even,
right.
but we're gonna uncover how it really works
Yes.
and why it's more than just a study hack.
Well, and what's captivating about active recall
Mm-hmm.
is that it leverages a fundamental principle
Huh.
of how our brains learn.
Okay.
The harder your brain works to retrieve a piece of information, the more likely it is to stick.
So it's not about just passively absorbing information. It's about
Yeah.
actively kind of wrestling with it,
Right,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Think about how you learn a new language.
Mm-hmm.
You don't become fluent just by reading grammar rules.
Right.
You need to actively practice speaking and recalling words to truly internalize them.
Right. Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
But I've always wondered,
Yeah.
why is actively retrieving information so much more effective than just rereading or highlighting?
Yeah.
Like what's going on there?
It all comes down to the encoding-retrieval relationship.
Okay.
Each time you struggle to recall something
Mm-hmm.
and then successfully retrieve it,
Yeah.
you're strengthening the neural pathways associated with that knowledge.
Okay.
It's like carving a path through a dense forest.
Right.
The more you walk that path,
Okay.
the clearer and more accessible it becomes.
So struggling is actually a good thing.
Yes.
It's like a mental workout for our brains.
Precisely.
Okay.
It's not about being perfect on the first try.
Mm-hmm.
It's about pushing your brain to work harder, which ultimately leads to better retention.
I'm starting to see the light here.
Yeah.
So, but what about those times when we do successfully recall information?
Okay.
How does that impact memory?
Well, when you successfully retrieve a piece of information,
Mm-hmm.
your brain essentially gives it a stamp of approval,
Right.
saying, hey, this is important. Let's hold on to this.
Right.
It reinforces the idea that this information is worth storing in long-term memory.
Right. So it's not just about creating the path, it's about paving it for long-term use.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And this is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
There's a landmark study that really hammered home the difference between active recall and passive rereading.
Okay.
Karpik and Rohrer, back in 2008,
Mm-hmm.
found that participants who used active recall retained a staggering 80% of the material a week later.
Wow.
Those who simply reread only retained about 34%.
Wow, that's a massive difference.
Yeah.
It's a huge difference.
It is.
It really highlights the power of active retrieval.
Yeah.
But, beyond just helping us remember things for exams, right?
Right.
What are some other benefits of using active recall?
Well, one of the key advantages is that it helps you pinpoint those knowledge gaps.
Okay.
When you actively try to retrieve information,
Mm-hmm.
you quickly realize what you don't know,
Right.
which makes your study time far more efficient.
It's like a spotlight shining directly on the areas that need more attention. Instead of wasting time reviewing things I already know,
Yes.
I can focus on the areas where I'm shaky.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And because active recall requires more effort, it forces you to be more engaged with the material.
Mm.
This can help combat that dreaded mind wandering that plagues even the most dedicated learners.
Oh, I know that feeling all too well.
Yeah.
Half the time I'm reading a textbook, I end up thinking about, what I'm having for dinner or scrolling through social media.
Right.
Active recall sounds like a much needed antidote to that kind of mental drifting.
It certainly helps you stay present and focused on the task at hand.
Okay.
And let's not forget the confidence boost that comes with successfully recalling information.
Right.
Knowing you've got the material locked in
Yeah,
can make a world of difference when it comes to exams or presentations.
that's huge. That's a huge perk.
Yeah,
There's nothing worse than that feeling of walking into a test feeling completely unprepared.
right.
Active recall sounds like it could be a game changer for pre-test jitters. So we've talked about the science
Yeah.
and the benefits,
Yeah.
but now I'm kind of curious about the practical side.
Okay.
What are some of the most effective ways to actually implement active recall in our lives?
Well, one of the most popular methods is using flashcards.
Okay.
But we're not talking about those old school index cards.
Right.
Apps like Anki and Quizlet have revolutionized the flashcard game
Okay.
by incorporating spaced repetition algorithms.
Mhm.
They schedule your reviews at increasing intervals,
Okay.
ensuring you revisit information just before you're about to forget it.
So it's like having a personal trainer for your memory,
Yes.
reminding you to hit the mental gym at just the right time.
Exactly.
But what if flashcards aren't your thing?
Yeah.
What are some other ways to incorporate active recall?
Another powerful technique is practice testing.
Okay.
Studies have actually shown that taking practice tests can be even more effective than simply reviewing your notes.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I always feel like I solidify my knowledge the most when I'm taking a test.
It forces me to pull everything together.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And it's not just for academic subjects.
Yeah.
You can create your own practice tests for anything you're trying to learn,
Right.
whether it's for work, a hobby, or just personal growth.
So quizzes aren't just for students anymore.
Right.
They're for anyone who wants to level up their knowledge.
Exactly.
I like it. What are some other techniques we can use?
One effective method is to try summarizing information without looking at your notes.
Oh, okay.
This forces you to actively recall the key points
Okay.
and organize them in a way that makes sense to you.
Ooh, that sounds challenging, but I can see how it would be a powerful way to deepen understanding.
It really is.
Yeah.
And speaking of deepening understanding, have you ever heard of the Feynman technique?
It rings a bell, but I can't quite place it.
Yeah.
Refresh my memory.
It's named after the brilliant physicist Richard Feynman.
Okay.
The idea is to explain a concept to someone else as if you were teaching it.
Oh, this forces you to break it down into simpler terms.
Right.
Identify any gaps in your own understanding
Okay.
and come up with clear examples.
I remember now.
Yeah.
It's like taking active recall to the next level.
It is, yes.
You're not just retrieving information for yourself.
Right.
You're trying to make it understandable for someone else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the process of explaining it out loud helps solidify the information in your own mind as well.
Now, we've covered flashcards, practice tests,
Yeah.
summarization,
Right.
the Feynman technique.
Yes,
It seems like there are a lot of different ways to approach active recall.
there are.
Is there a way to combine these approaches for maximum impact?
That's where spaced repetition comes in.
Okay.
It's all about reviewing information at increasing intervals to maximize retention.
Okay.
Imagine you learn something new today.
Mm-hmm.
If you review it tomorrow, and then again a few days later, and then again a week later,
Okay.
you're essentially resetting that forgetting curve
Right.
and pushing the memory further into long-term storage.
So it's about strategically timing those review sessions
Yeah,
to outsmart our brain's natural tendency to forget.
exactly.
But isn't there a risk of overdoing it with active recall? Could all this mental effort backfire in some way?
That's a great question, and
Yeah.
one we'll dive into more deeply in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
But it's important to remember that active recall, like any tool, needs to be used wisely.
Okay, so stay tuned, folks, because in part 2, we'll explore the potential downsides of active recall,
Yeah.
how to avoid burnout, and how to make this technique a sustainable part of your learning journey.
It should be good.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Me too.
This is really fascinating stuff. It
Yeah.
is. I'm learning a lot already.
I think a lot of people are,
I think so, too.
especially with how much information is out there.
Yeah, I mean,
It's really easy to feel overwhelmed.
it is. Absolutely.
So having tools and techniques
Mm-hmm.
to help us navigate that information landscape is essential.
Couldn't agree more. Well,
Yep.
we'll be back soon with part 2 of our deep dive.
Sounds good.
All right, see you then. Okay, bye.
Yeah. It's fascinating, right? How
Yeah.
something as beneficial as active recall
Right.
can also have, like,
Mm.
potential downsides if we're not careful.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that even the most effective tools
Right.
need to be used
Yeah.
with a sense of balance and awareness.
It's like that saying,
Yeah.
too much of a good thing can be a bad thing.
Exactly. Exactly.
So let's unpack some of those potential pitfalls.
Okay.
We hinted at the risk of mental fatigue.
Yeah,
Can you elaborate on that a bit more?
absolutely.
Okay.
Our brains are incredible,
Yeah.
but they have limits.
Right.
Just like our physical bodies,
Mm-hmm.
if we're constantly pushing ourselves to the max,
Okay.
mentally or physically,
Mm-hmm.
we risk burnout.
It's like training for a marathon.
Right.
If you
Oh.
try to run at full speed every single day.
You're going to injure yourself.
Yeah.
You need rest and recovery
Yeah.
to build strength and endurance.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
The same principle applies to active recall.
Okay.
If we're constantly bombarding our brains with information and trying to actively recall everything,
Yeah.
we could experience mental exhaustion,
Right.
reduced focus,
Yeah.
and even decreased retention in the long run.
So it's not about cramming as much information as possible into our brains.
No.
It's about
Yeah.
using active recall strategically
Yeah.
and giving our brains time to process
Exactly.
and consolidate information.
And that brings us to another potential pitfall.
Okay.
Information overload.
Oh, yeah.
We live in a world where we're constantly inundated with information from all directions.
Mm-hmm.
Social media, news, podcasts, you name it.
It's like drinking from a fire hose.
It is.
There's just so much coming at us all the time.
Yeah, and if we're not careful,
Right.
active recall could become just another way to add to that deluge.
Instead of helping us filter and retain valuable information,
Yeah.
it could actually make things worse by encouraging us to try to remember everything,
Right.
even the trivial stuff.
So it's not just about remembering more. It's about remembering what matters.
Right.
How do we strike that balance? How do we avoid getting swept away by the information tsunami?
It's crucial to be selective about what we choose to actively recall.
Okay.
We need to prioritize information
Right.
that aligns with our goals,
Yeah.
interests, and values, and let the rest go.
It's about curating our mental diets, just like we curate our physical diets.
Right.
We wouldn't want to eat junk food all the time.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't feed our brains junk information either.
Precisely. We need to be mindful about what we allow into our mental space.
Right.
And make conscious choices about what we want to retain.
Okay.
Now let's address another potential concern.
Okay.
The risk of overemphasizing memorization at the expense of deeper understanding.
Right.
Could active recall, if not used thoughtfully, lead to a sort of surface-level learning
Yeah.
where we're focused on recalling facts
Yeah.
without truly grasping the concepts behind them?
That's an interesting point.
Yeah.
It's like memorizing a list of ingredients
Right.
without understanding how they work together to create a delicious dish.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Active recall is a fantastic tool for strengthening memory, but it's not a replacement for critical thinking,
Right.
analysis, and synthesis.
Yeah.
We need to use it in conjunction with other learning strategies
Okay.
that promote deeper understanding.
So it's about finding that balance between remembering the facts and understanding the why behind them.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Techniques like concept mapping, problem solving,
Right.
and engaging in thoughtful discussions
Yeah.
can help us connect the dots
Okay.
and develop a more holistic understanding of the material.
Right.
It's about going beyond rote memorization and engaging with information on a deeper level.
So active recall is a powerful tool,
Yeah,
but it's not a magic bullet.
it's not a magic bullet, no.
It needs to be used thoughtfully and strategically
Yeah.
in combination with other learning approaches
Right.
to really unlock its full potential.
Yes.
But before we move on, I'm curious about something.
Okay.
We've been talking about active recall primarily in the context of studying and learning new information.
Right.
But can this technique be applied to other areas of our lives?
Absolutely.
Okay. Could it help us remember names, dates, or
Yes.
random bits of information we encounter throughout the day?
That's a fantastic question,
Yeah.
and one that gets to the heart of how versatile active recall can be.
Okay.
It's not just a study hack.
Right.
It's a fundamental principle of how our brains work.
Right.
And because of that,
Okay.
it can be applied
Yeah.
to a wide range of situations.
So instead of just using it to ace our next exam, we could potentially use it to remember the name of someone we just met, our anniversary,
Yeah.
or even where we parked the car.
Exactly.
Okay.
Imagine being able to walk into a networking event
Yeah.
and effortlessly recall names,
Right.
or to remember important details from a meeting without frantically scribbling notes.
That would be incredible.
Yeah.
But how do we actually apply active recall to those everyday situations? Let's start with remembering names.
Okay.
I'm terrible with names.
Oh, yeah.
I meet someone new, and 5 minutes later, their name has vanished from my memory.
One approach could be to use flashcards.
Flashcards, okay.
You could create digital flashcards
Right.
with pictures of people you've met and their names on the back.
Okay.
Then you could quiz yourself regularly,
Right.
trying to recall the names from the pictures.
That's a clever idea.
Yeah.
It's like putting faces to names,
Right.
but with a digital twist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you could even add little details to the flashcards,
No.
like their profession or something unique about them to help jog your memory.
It's like creating your own personalized memory palace
Yes.
for people you've met.
Right.
I love it.
Right.
But what about remembering things like birthdays or important dates?
Yeah.
I'm always scrambling at the last minute to buy birthday cards.
You could create a calendar
Okay.
specifically for birthdays and anniversaries.
Right.
And then quiz yourself on upcoming dates regularly.
Okay.
The act of actively trying to recall the dates
Yeah.
helps solidify them in your memory.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
I'm always forgetting important dates.
Right.
This would definitely help me stay ahead of the game.
Yeah.
But what about those random bits of information we encounter throughout the day?
Yeah.
Like a fascinating fact from a podcast or an interesting article online.
Okay.
how do we keep those nuggets of knowledge from slipping away?
That's where techniques like summarization and the Feynman technique can be incredibly useful.
So if I hear something interesting on a podcast,
Yeah?
I could try to summarize it in my own words later, or even try to explain it to a friend as if I were teaching them.
Exactly.
Okay.
That act of actively recalling and processing the information
Right.
helps solidify it in your memory.
Mm-hmm.
It's like turning those fleeting moments of insight
Right.
into lasting knowledge.
It's like creating a mental web,
Yes.
connecting those little bits of information to other things we know.
Exactly.
But with all this focus on actively remembering things,
Yeah.
is there a risk that we might start to prioritize
Right.
rote memorization over genuine understanding?
That's a really astute observation.
Okay.
And it brings us to a crucial point about the limitations of active recall.
Right.
It's an incredibly powerful tool for memory.
Yeah.
But it's not a magic bullet.
Right.
It needs to be used wisely and in conjunction with other learning approaches to be truly effective.
Okay.
We'll delve into those limitations and nuances more in part 3 of our deep dive.
Looking forward to it. It's like, you wouldn't use a hammer to screw in a light bulb.
Exactly. Active recall is incredibly powerful for strengthening memory, but it's not a one-size-fits-all solution for every learning challenge.
So it's not about replacing all our other learning strategies, but rather finding ways to integrate active recall into a more holistic approach.
Precisely. Think of it like a well-balanced meal.
Okay.
You need a variety of nutrients to thrive, not just one type of food.
Right.
Similarly, you need a variety of learning strategies to develop a deep and nuanced understanding of any subject.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
So, let's delve into some of those limitations you mentioned.
Okay.
We talked about the risk of information overload and how active recall could potentially exacerbate that problem.
Right. In today's digital age,
Yeah.
we're constantly bombarded with information. If we try to actively recall everything we encounter, we're essentially setting ourselves up for mental exhaustion and diminishing returns.
It's like trying to fill a bucket that's already overflowing.
Exactly.
You end up losing more water than you're able to retain.
You got it.
Yeah.
It's crucial to be discerning about what we choose to focus on.
Okay.
We need to prioritize information that's truly valuable and relevant to our goals and let go of the rest.
So it's not about becoming a walking encyclopedia, but rather about curating a mental library filled with knowledge that truly matters to us.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
It's about being intentional with our learning
Right.
and focusing on information that will truly enrich our lives.
Now let's talk about another potential limitation we touched on earlier.
Okay.
The risk of prioritizing rote memorization over genuine understanding.
Yeah.
Could focusing too much on active recall lead to a sort of surface level learning where we're able to recall facts, but not necessarily grasp the deeper meaning or context?
That's a valid concern.
Yeah.
Active recall is fantastic for strengthening those neural connections.
Right.
But it's not a substitute for critical thinking, analysis, and the ability to connect ideas in a meaningful way.
It's like being able to recite the lines of a play.
Right.
Without truly understanding the character's motivations or the underlying themes of the story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We need to use active recall in conjunction with other learning strategies that encourage deeper processing. Things like concept mapping, problem solving, and engaging in thoughtful discussions can help us move beyond simply remembering facts to actually understanding the concepts and their implications.
So it's not just about remembering the what,
Yeah.
but also the why and the how.
Exactly.
It's about connecting those dots.
Right.
And building a richer understanding of the world around us.
Precisely. Active recall can be a powerful tool for laying a strong foundation of knowledge.
Okay.
But we need to go beyond that foundation and build upon it, using other learning strategies that foster critical thinking and deeper understanding.
This has been such an insightful exploration of active recall.
I agree.
We've uncovered its incredible benefits, delved into its potential limitations, and ultimately realized that it's not a magic bullet, but rather a powerful tool
It is.
that needs to be used thoughtfully and strategically.
It's all about finding that balance
Yeah.
between actively engaging with information and allowing our brains the time and space they need to process and integrate that information into our existing knowledge frameworks.
And as with any tool,
Yeah.
The more we understand its capabilities and limitations, the more effectively we can use it to achieve our learning goals.
It's been a fascinating journey.
Yeah.
And I hope our listeners feel empowered.
I think they do.
To experiment with active recall and discover how it can enhance their own learning experiences.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into active recall, I want to leave you with one final thought.
Okay.
Learning is an adventure.
Yes.
Embrace the challenge. Be curious.
Absolutely.
And never stop exploring. Until next time, happy learning.
That's good.